Today, my title is The Joy of the Lord is Our Strength. I want to first, do you realize that we're surrounded with a lot of drama? I mean, in our individual lives or, in the wider community or in the world. And if you didn't know that, God bless you. I want to live where you live. And how do we deal with all that drama? How do we deal with the challenges and pressures in our life? You know how diamonds are made? Takes a lot of tons of pressure and time to create a diamond. You know how olive oil is made? They are pressed and squeezed. Do you know how grape juice or wine is made? I mean, the grapes aren't just going to sit up on the shelf and look pretty and make wine. That isn't how it happens. Is there a purpose for pressure in our lives? Is there a purpose for challenges in our lives? Could there be a purpose for drama? Not calling for it. But could there be some redemptive purpose in the pressures that occur in our lives? Otherwise, why do they occur? Why are we surrounded with them? What are we to do with them? I want to mention a book in the Hebrew Scriptures you may not have heard of before. Some of you have. The book of Nehemiah. What had happened is that Jerusalem had been destroyed. The walls had been burnt. The stones had been torn down. The city had been destroyed. Many people were sent off into exile. And there was this man by the name of Nehemiah. Nehemiah was a person that, he was not a preacher. He was not somebody that, was supposed to be in charge. But he was very, very concerned with what was going on. He was from Jerusalem. He was from Israel. And he was very concerned. And so he gathered people together. First, he got permission from the king that he was serving, King Artaxerxes. Now, we don't know if it's Artaxerxes the first or Artaxerxes the second, but this was a king in Persia, and he asked the king's permission to have leave to go reconstruct the city of Jerusalem and to get lumber from the king's forest. Can you give me your lumber from the forest so that we can rebuild this city? Now let me ask you this question. How many of you here, honestly, have ever had to rebuild your life? How many? I want to know who I'm talking to. Some of you haven't yet. How many of you have ever been part of an organization or a church that needed to redefine itself and reorganize itself? Anybody who's been here more than 3 years, your hand should be up. Just a hint. In case you forgot. It takes a lot of grit, a lot of courage to face those challenges. And yet there's a purpose in all of them. There's a purpose in every single one of those challenges. Now, first of all, this title, The Joy of the Lord is Our Strength. Nehemiah and Ezra and others were meeting with this community of people that were in Jerusalem. They were discouraged. They were disillusioned. They felt powerless. Have you ever been there? So, he encouraged them. The joy of the Lord is your strength. First of all, when we know that God is here with us, that God is with us here as everywhere, that there's only one power and one presence active as our lives and as the universe, God the good omnipotence. When we know that that God is everywhere fully present, then we know we are never alone in this. We know that there is a power greater than anything else in the universe that is upholding us and conspiring on our behalf. Do you know? And here is a conspiracy theory. Are you ready for a conspiracy theory? God, or if you wish to say the universe, is conspiring on your behalf. It'll take as long as it takes because we need to allow it. We need to work with the process. But first know that God is there. One of my best, well, a number of very good friends as I think about it, in recovery, their recovery process and 12-step programs was their way of finding the truth of who they are. It was their way of discovering the power, the presence of God, their higher power, whatever they call it. But it was the pressure that drove them there. I'm going to say something here that may sound so weird. I just want you to chew on it. This world is working exactly the way it needs to. If we don't like how it's working, guess who can change it and work with it differently? But this world is working in just such a way as to push me deeper, as to push us deeper, and to allow us to tap into a deeper resource. There's a recovery group in Wichita, Kansas that I connected with, and it's called Unexpected Inner Resources, UIR, Unexpected Inner Resources. Now, this particular 12-step group was a little different in that they would do book studies. And they would study things like Sermon on the Mount by Emmett Fox. They were studying New Thought. Now, they were from all different spiritual traditions, but they were studying New Thought, which is what we are. Because they were identifying that we are not alone in this. Whatever you are facing, whatever the loss in your life, whatever the change in your life, whatever the change in the organization or the church that you've been a part of, whatever the changes that are going on in this country and in our world, we are not alone. God is with us in this. We are not alone. God is there. Last night I was tired. I went to bed about 9:30, which is very early for me. I needed to. Went to bed at 9:30. And then I woke up at 11:30, and my neighbors got home, and it took a while before I went back to sleep. I bless them. And I was just filled with this radiant presence of God all around me. I knew that everything was all right. That no matter what happens in our life, that God is there. No matter what happens in our life, purpose is there. No matter what happens in our life, it is all right. And not only have we discovered that individually, but we've discovered that as a church community. This is an amazing spiritual community. And there were days in its past where it went through some challenges. Would some of you agree that there were some challenges? Okay. And this community took it upon themselves to do the deep work, to stand up, to go the distance. This community chose to know that God is working in, through, and as this spiritual community. That this community is a divine idea from the mind of God. And you chose as a community who you wanted to be. And so this community has risen. Whew. Wow. It is risen. It is alive. It is thriving, and we're building the beloved community. So first and foremost, that presence of God, the 23rd Psalm. The Lord is my shepherd. To know that presence is there wherever we are. And not just for ourselves, but so that we will be a light to the world. Secondly, I would say, and there's many other things I could say, but secondly, I would say that these pressures, these challenges, drama occurs so that we can develop grit. More and more in research, it has been pointed out that what is really needed in our world is grit. People who are willing to stay the course, who will stand and who will be strong in that strength of doing what is right. I want to give an example of this. She's probably watching. My wife, Olga Lucia. She's coming home tomorrow night, by the way. And I have her permission to share some of these things. Some things I've shared before, but my wife grew up in a poor home, poor conditions. It was decent, but poor, in Medellin, Colombia. Medellin, currently, the metropolitan area of Medellin is over 4 million people. Some people pronounce it Medellin, but people from that area of Colombia pronounce it Medellin. Her mother would not allow her to go to school. Her mother kept her from going to school, would not allow her. Your job is to be here in the house and to help me with housework. You do not need to go to school. You're a girl. At age 10, my wife connected with someone, a neighbor, who wanted to help and snuck out and went to school. She had to fight for her right to go to school. She didn't fight going to school. Yeah. She had to fight for her right to go to school. So here she is, a 10-year-old, developing quickly like a young teenager, and they took her to kindergarten. So here's these little kids, and here's this big kid, and they said, okay, what color is this? What color is this? And those of you who know Olga Lucia well, you can imagine her doing this. She said, look, I'm not mentally incapacitated. I don't just know my colors. I know multiplication tables. I've taught myself to read. You test me. You see how I am. In that huge metropolis of Medellin, Olga Lucia became one of the top students in the whole city. And while she was there in Medellin, she discovered this Russian place that wanted to teach people Russian. Now, I want to back up just a second. The environment in which Olga Lucia was raised was physically and emotionally abusive. At age 14, her mom tried to hook her up with a 44-year-old man. I believe there was money involved. And she told her mom, "You can have whatever friends you want, but I am 14, he's 44. No." At age 15, she moved out of the house and found other moms. Now, we bless her mom. We're in touch with them, and we love her family. But can you imagine? Some of you maybe can imagine this. Going out on your own at age 15, continuing to go to school, and becoming one of the top students. And at this Russian outpost, they were teaching Russian, and she started studying Russian. And they said, "Oh, by the way, we have a scholarship form here if you wish to apply to study in Moscow." She didn't think too much of it. She filled it out, put it in. But because she was living in different places, she didn't know they had been trying to reach her. And finally, she got the message that you have won the scholarship. If you are not on the plane within 24 hours, you will lose your scholarship. Her friends helped her, gave her some money, gathered things up, drove her to, I believe, Bogota, to then fly to Moscow. And she was halfway to Moscow before her mom knew it. She got her bachelor's and her master's degree in physical chemistry, all doing it in Russian. If you can't tell, I'm pretty proud of her. She is one really good example, one of the best examples I know of grit. Okay, things go wrong sometimes. Okay, sometimes the rug gets pulled out from underneath us. Sometimes things don't go our way. Then we find a way. Then we stand up. Then we find a way to keep going. That is grit. We need grit. This spiritual community here has developed grit. Some of you had to do some very deep work. I've developed grit. A lot of us have. And in our lives, those things that are squeezing us, as it says in Romans chapter 12, do not let the world squeeze you into its mold, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. We can be this presence of joy. We can be this presence of love. We can be this presence of transformation. We do not have to be anybody's victim. We do not have to be powerless. God is with us, and God has been working as a spiritual community. I'll be talking more about that in the annual meeting today. Encourage all of you to attend that would like to at noon. We'll be sharing about the wonderful things that Spirit is doing in this community. But I celebrate how this power is working in each one of us. Whatever you are facing. I don't know all the things you're facing. I know some of the things with some of you. But I know that there is a power that is greater than anything you are facing. There is a power that gives us joy in the middle of the night. I was filled with joy and ecstasy last night. And I was giving thanks for my neighbors who were tramping around on the floor. You can have joy in whatever circumstances you have in your life. You are filled with the presence of God. You are filled with the joy of God. You are the presence of God in action. So, under pressure, got some drama? Guess what? You're being made into a diamond. Thank you. I invite us to take a deep breath as we go into this time of meditation. We give thanks for the presence of Spirit here. We give thanks for all the ways in which God has been working in, through, and as our lives. We give thanks for the ways in which God has been working mightily as His spiritual community. We give thanks as we go for a minute into the silence. We give thanks, God, for your presence here with us. We give thanks for all the circumstances of our lives, knowing you are with us in it. We give thanks, knowing that there is a power greater in us than any of our circumstances. And for all of this, we give thanks, and we say together, and so it is. Amen.